Okay, we are recording. Hello, everybody. Now it is the AT Town Hall. Here we are. Oh, Jenny waits for the official and she kicks her video right on. She's like, oh, now it's official. I'm in. How are you? Well, we had an official presentation last week, or an official group taking the lead last week with the quiet leadership team. If you didn't participate last week, go back and check the video. It was really good as conversation goes. This week, we're back to the good old fashioned no plan, no expectations, and just ready for a good conversation. I have my little note right here. I'm ready to drop back onto if I have to. But otherwise, I'll leave it to you guys. Successes for the past week you want to share. Set up the conversation.
I had a self-care success. I took 2 whole days off of work and went away. I know I haven't done it in like 2 years. I was kind of weirded out by it being a Thursday and me being someplace else.
Oh my God, that sounds great. I would much rather just talk about that for the whole hour. Like, what's that like? 2 days? It sounds awesome. Like,
I don't know though. I became my nephew's sous chef and we made 150 dumplings from hand. So
right.
It's a different kind of work. He's a very demanding chef at 12.
I would argue that still sounds like better work than work.
Oh, so. Absolutely. Absolutely. It was glorious. I highly recommend it to anybody who can take it.
Yes, anytime someone uses the word glorious, because I did it last week too, then you know it was a good time. Then you know it was right. Good. So now you're ready to take on the world now. You've had a couple days to recharge.
I am. I feel like my head is a little bit back in the game for this last stretch. I mean, we don't finish school until June 16th for our regular school year, because we started 2 weeks late with kids, and then we jump right into our extended school year. So essentially, my next little break is the July 4th week. Yeah.
So maybe that's a good conversation.
Yeah, Kelly, that's how I feel. Exactly. Your expression was how I feel about it.
Yeah. How are people setting themselves up for success for this last stretch run? Like, what are we doing? Like, what are you doing for yourselves to get through this? Or do you have goals for this next little chunk of time? Do you feel you need a 2-day break like Elisa just had to kind of get you to that little finishing run here? It's funny that you're in the same time frame that I am now, Lisa. You're usually the early in the year. Like the kids here end on the 19th, which is really funny because usually you're well done by then.
Yeah, well, our teachers started at the same time. We just basically front loaded with essentially 3 weeks of training and prep. And then our students started August 31st, essentially September 1st, which is late for us. I think our date next year is the 10th when kids are supposed to start in August.
See, that's normal for us, is that kind of first week in September kind of stuff. So Shannon's going to pray just to make it through. That's a solid plan. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think to me, it's, I was thinking about it as I was driving back home over the weekend going, okay, like, how do I make it? And I'm going back to my good old well-used strategy of like chunking, exactly what we do for our students on a test that's overwhelming. It's like, all right, how can I chunk these tasks or this day? Or, for a long time, I've been going day by day. All right, like I got through that day. What's on my calendar? Okay, I got 2 evals. Let me prep for those. I've been doing this day by day thing. And I think now, I'm going to have to keep doing that. But I think also just looking at, okay, what systems can I put in place? I have a staff member transitioning out. So like, what do I need to do on the exit end so that like we're prepared for whoever's taking over her work? And just, I think we're going to have to go back to chunking. Like, what tasks can I do together? And then knowing that I cannot bite off everything that has to be done between now and the end of the year in 1 week. Like or I'll go crazy. So I'm open to any other ideas other people have about how you close out the end of the year from an AT perspective.
Yeah, I would love to hear it, because I'm in the same boat as you. I just chunk. I look at this week and nothing else. If it happens next week, it might as well happen in 2022 at this point. I'm not even looking. But if it's this week, I'll focus on it. But yeah, up until Friday, I won't look further in my calendar. So that's my strategy too. And I don't think it's the best by a long shot. So I'm up for ideas as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of become this mismatch of like, okay, like what is, because somebody else's priority is not necessarily mine, and yet their
Mhm.
priority then becomes mine when it's emergent or some other thing. So I could lay out a very pretty week of productivity and then it gets all shot to heck
Yeah.
because everybody
Yeah.
else's stuff. And like Lori, with you guys just transitioning back to in person, I remember those first weeks of school, and it was uh, everything just took 3 times longer,
Mhm.
and everything was just harder, even though it was the same tasks. It seems silly that it was harder, but it was.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of kinks. We don't even know how we're going to be able to give them lunch yet because there's all these rules,
Mhm.
Mhm.
So luckily,
Right.
while it's not my department, I still worry for everybody.
Yeah. Right. Because
Right.
it'll all impact every
Yep.
piece will impact everybody else.
Yep.
And so it all snowballs
Yeah.
into
I
one.
mean, we have some schools that have partitions on the lunch tables. We have some schools that that we have kids that started eating lunch at 9:30 in the morning,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they just extended it out so that, kids were 4 to 6 feet apart while they were eating among the tables.
Yeah.
I think everybody's done by grade level. The places schools have done different things, but yeah, it's all those little like prior to this year things that we didn't necessarily have to think about.
Right.
So and it does affect, like Mike was saying, it does affect us because I have kids for which some of my targeted like social language times for AAC is lunch. Well, that's a crapshoot now because like their device can't really yell loud enough to be able to interact with the person who's 6 feet away to
Mhm.
talk about something fun. So it's like, okay, well, let's scrap that plan and find a different social time in the classroom.
Right. Yeah. Really good point. Anybody else? Something else? Anything you're trying to wrap your brain around for the end of the year? How you're going to get there, both personally and programmatically? How you're going to get there?
I know that I'm in Region 13, which is the Austin, Texas area, and that our big focus has been, we just had a assistive technology leadership meeting with a lot of the school districts around the area, and the big, I think we've been working collaboratively as a group to develop, a year at a glance calendar that we could all, which is great when we're all able to put our brains together and talk about, yes, we're trying to finish out. We've got about, I think, 3 more weeks until we're out for summer. And so, yes, it is busy, but now is the time to be thinking about this year as it, because it'll be here before we know it.
Mhm.
And so I think we have developed a really good, somebody who had time obviously had already created some stuff, and we took that and added to it. So that's been helpful. And then I know for me, like I'm a big Covey fan, like identify the big rocks and kind of keep those as the priority. And I just have to be mindful like I write it down. It's on my computer. It's right there. I just have to remember these are my big rocks. So a lot of to-do lists.
I'm feeling your pain, Kelly. Look, these are all of my to-do lists. And I found myself, and Naomi's here with me right now. Naomi and I just left another meeting, and I found myself halfway through sorting through all of my to-do list cards to try to see if I could throw one out. And I was so upset when I couldn't because I hadn't done any of it. And now I've just added another card to the list. Here it is right here. And so, yeah, I get you, that idea of your rocks or your pieces that you have to address, just finding some time to do that and figuring out what that looks like. Because Kelly hit a really good point. We're working towards the end of a year, so people are kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. But we really do need to start thinking about September still too. And do people have the bandwidth right now to even talk about that? And in a lot of cases, people are saying, no, I don't have the bandwidth to talk about that. But, you want to push back and say, okay, but if we don't talk about it now, when do we talk about it? Because like Kelly just said, it'll be here. It'll be August and we haven't talked about it yet. And so unfortunately, this is the time to talk about it. And
So
I'm just dropping
I have
off.
a curiosity question, Mike. Why is
Yeah.
your to-do list in index cards and not in something like Google Keep? Is it just not that system doesn't work for you for that thing?
Well,
Or
I think a lot
I'm
of
just
it now.
curious.
So on a normal year, so I'd say 2019, let's call that the last normal year. This would have all been in Google Keep, but I don't leave my desk.
Mm.
So I don't need to put it in there. I'm putting it on these cards and I'm just writing new to-do lists and crossing things off as I go. And if something feels a little more long-term, I think I'll probably put it into Google Keep, but none of this yet has reached the level of long-term. Unfortunately, these are all short-term things that need to be resolved in the next week or two. And Shannon says Post-its. Yeah, it's the same idea. And Shannon, the only reason I went to index cards over Post-its is because I was at the dollar store and they were $200 for $1. And that's all. That's the only reason. So
Economics.
I've gone to big index cards because they were the cheap ones at the time. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any, I think it's a result of my environment change. If we want to go all set framework on it, my environment has changed. My environment is no longer a plane or a hotel room or my car. And so my environment is now this 4-foot square area that I never leave.
Right. And that's my struggle is that I'm kind of in a hybrid. So like,
Yeah.
Sometimes paper works best if I'm doing something, a presentation where I'm at home in my little work office, but like I'm back in schools doing things.
Yeah.
So like the two methods kind of clash sometimes because my brain doesn't have the right things in the right modality.
Right. Yeah.
I go to look for something and it's on a Post-it note that's in front of my desk when I'm out in a classroom with my iPad.
Yeah, that I have to tell you, you're tapping into one of my fears right now is that I'm gonna leave this office soon at some point, and I'm gonna realize I haven't written these little notes down anywhere else except these little cards, and I'm not gonna bring them with me. Then I'm gonna realize I can't do any of these projects. I just found I'm teaching a college class over the summer, like one of those little two different 5-week semesters. And apparently it starts next week. I did know that. But apparently I have to go into the college. Like I actually have to go there. So I'm gonna have to leave my little room here. And I'm wasn't mentally prepared for that. So I've started to reassess my little index card system here.
Mike, I'm old school also and a little on the ADHD side. So I need my old paper, and I just use a little binder and it's got a little pocket. And so I have a written calendar. Now everything's in my computer calendar, but there are times I don't want to turn it on. And I want to go breeze through the pages.
Yeah.
And I just tuck this in the back of my computer case and it goes with my computer. So I have them both. And it's got a little pocket for my little Post-its of my today's things to do sometimes. So I'm with you. It's everybody's got to have their system.
Yeah. And it's funny how this year forced the system to change. Again, if you talked to me, Shannon, like last year, I would have said, no, I'm relentless about putting everything in my phone because that's the only thing I'm always having with me. And now I'm reevaluating that. And I can envision in my computer bag taking a stack of index cards, kind of binder clip together as some other to-do list too, until I start to shift back to my electronic version. So it'll be interesting how that shift happens. It's going to be weird. It's definitely going to be weird.
I will say this is going to sound really mushy, you guys, but I mean, this group, so this is my third time to join, but I feel like this has been something to look forward to on Mondays. And I really have enjoyed it. And I feel like this is going to be that little thing that helps like get me through the end of the year. It's just really great to meet people from around the country who are dealing with the same exact things that, because sometimes, I mean, you guys know you're working solo, and so it can feel very isolating. So yeah. I think this is a good thing.
Well, we're happy to have you. I remember at one point in the end of last year, we had this conversation, a small conversation about not doing these anymore, and people got very mad. And so, okay, so we'll keep doing them. That's fine. I like it. I think it's fun.
There wasn't a full-on riot, but it was
It
close.
wasn't, but it was as close as you can get to a angry mob in a virtual setting. It was a virtual mob angry. It was virtual angry mob that said, no, these have to keep going. So yeah, these are great.
Well, and like you said, Kelly, I think there's something about the uniqueness of our jobs that very often we
Mhm.
are in silos, and it's not like I can go one office down and be like, hey, I'm working on this thing where we're blah, blah. They're like, I have no clue. I'll listen to you, but I don't really know how to help you because I don't know what you do.
Yeah.
So I do think having, I am a strong proponent of having a strong PLN, and the way to do that for our roles is stuff like this, because, you know, we're not going to find it in internal district or, you know, work offerings. It just
Right.
doesn't.
Right. I mean, if you just even scan our videos right now, our friends in Rockford are something to strive for. They have a group they can talk to in person. And they are able to do that. But look at the rest of you guys. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of us, look, we're single heads on a camera at this point, and that's probably very telling about how we do a lot of our service. And so, yeah, these are incredibly important. Yeah, I think they are. They do have value, even though they are unstructured and free flowing and lacking any real plan. They do have some value.
Well, and I think it's the same reason why I personally love the open forum Wednesday AT chat week, because I think it's it kind of naturally we end up with really good, rich discussion. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, for people who have just kind of come into doing these, what would be helpful going like from now until whenever June? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? Just we have this space reserved and this understanding group, or are there specific things that we could do? Yes, I saw Jennifer's comment. She gets grumpy when her Monday's busy and she can't be there. I totally agree. So I don't know if there's something specific we could do that would be helpful in this time.
I think closing out, it might even just be throwing out, you know, issues and like this, just having some conversations. Sometimes it's just a comfort to know others are in the same boat as you.
Right.
But I think in my role, because I work with the districts in Houston at the Education Service Center, I'm not actually in a district. And so my last trainings, my leadership meetings were all last week. What I'm doing now is finding all those loose ends. And it's actually harder because it's kind of like my sticky notes. Every time I turn around, it's all those things you let go, because this year was such an enigma. It's just such a new experience that I let a lot of things go that I just couldn't deal with. And now they're all coming back to haunt me. So there are things that now I have to tie off. And it is hard because in my world also, I think there's still a lot of people out there that don't understand the difference between accessibility and assistive technology. And so they think they've made something accessible, and they don't. Like, I'm getting a lot of comments from my AT team members that they're asking me to back them up with their directors in regards to support, because they've added all of these computer features and now their classroom's accessible, so they don't need AT tools. Well, it's like, well, you not only need the AT tools, but you also need the training for the success of the AT tools.
Right.
And IT can be AT, it still needs to be documented in the IEP. So there's just a lot of pieces that are coming out now just because of that lack of understanding. So I've got to figure out a way to continue, like you all, to build that understanding with others.
Yeah, it's that continuation, Shannon. It's that idea of moving people along this continuum of don't just think about the device, but the service that goes with it. And the service is much harder than the device. Finding a device is easy. I don't know if any of us would disagree with that statement. It's not hard to find a device. You go to Google, you'll find devices. It's finding the right device and then getting it to work in the scenario that student presents. That's the hard part. And that's the part where we need all of our teams to be supportive and to be part of the solution, and not just wait for us to swoop in, magically fix it, wave around a magic wand and everything's fixed and we continue on. That's the trickier part.
And documenting it so it can be replicated once you walk out that door.
Right.
So that it doesn't only work with your AT rep, and that's that building capacity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As we're getting towards the end of the year, have any of us started to catalog successes for this year that we can share going forward now that we're starting to get closer to the end of the year? And I'm leaving catalog very broad. I don't know, you tell me what that means to you. I'm personally thinking about being able to highlight student successes in some way for teams as we go forward. Like, look, there were moments of success. I think that for some people, and I'll speak for people I'm working with, there's just this kind of quiet resignation, like let's just make it be over. And let's accept that this was a lost year and nothing happened. And that's not true. Tons of things happened. And a lot of really good things happened. We had students who were successful. And how are we showing that to people to kind of remind them that this happened?
Mike, my unintended consequence this year, I've talked about doing 3 levels of training. I have a fundamentals 1, which is more evaluation, fundamentals 2, and then I have the systemic group. And it took me so much time to transition my face-to-face trainings to virtual for fundamentals 1 and fundamentals 2 that I was dreading last week's final systemic meeting, because I felt I had really abandoned them. But one thing I did do unintentionally is I paired groups together, strong districts, and I never knew if they would follow through. But when I came to our meeting last week, I was just blown away by the work they had done because they were paired up. And one of my smaller districts I never would have believed had a virtual conference for assistive technology out in Podunk nowhere.
Awesome.
And I was absolutely blown away by it. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Those are things to be able to celebrate. Successes. Good, Jennifer. You jumped on. I saw your video pop on and you were ready. Go ahead.
I was kind of to piggyback off of that. I think we were virtual most of the year. We didn't go back to in person until about March, but we've remained virtual on Wednesdays, and that has been a huge collaboration time throughout this year. I've seen so many teams that are doing trainings together, whether those are project core modules or just conferencing on students and being able to collaborate more. And I just think that was a huge success this year when there was a joint meeting time. We've got early and late start schools, so we all start at different times. And so it's been always a struggle to do any sort of training. And this year, having those Wednesdays made such a huge difference. And I'm sad that we won't have them next year. But kind of like what Shannon said, trying to pair, our early start schools where we've got a strong team and maybe one that needs more support, and our late start schools where maybe they can still find some collaborative meeting times. And hopefully they have also seen how successful our students can be when we have that time. So they maybe are more willing to devote some of that precious planning time to having some of those collaborative meetings next year. But I think that was a huge win this year for us.
Yeah. Isn't it a shame, Jennifer, that that's going to go away? And I recognize time and I get all that. So I'm not saying it, but isn't it such a bummer that we were able to find these moments in this bizarre year where things really worked and they had value and they made a difference. And now we're going to go back to potentially the way things were, and these pieces as they sit right now will go away. But how do we find the essence of those things and keep them going?
I think also there's more flexibility on behalf of staff in meeting virtually. So before the pandemic, I tried doing a collaborative learning team on core vocabulary, and I paired high schools from around our district so they couldn't meet in person. And I remember people looking at me and being like, "You want to meet how? Like on the computer? Like that's never going to work."
Right.
And there was so much resistance just to that meeting platform that I think even next year, even though we may not have Wednesdays, I think those barriers of location, at least in our larger district, won't be there because people would jump on a meeting virtually and collaborate. So there are pieces that I think will continue. I would like to see, some of our like half days or PD type days. I would like to see those used differently so that there's some flexibility for teachers to be able to do what they need to meet with teams rather than having all of these pre-planned trainings that are out there, in curriculum type stuff that may not apply to a lot of the teachers I work with. I would like to get rid of some of that, so that does open up some more flexibility. But
yeah, it could add some more. Yeah, I think so too, right? And I think, like Shannon said, it gave teams that would not normally have had the opportunity to collaborate, it gave them that chance. And they recognized the richness of those collaborations. And yeah, so now it feels like our job going forward is to figure out ways to carve out moments for this to continue to happen. Because those have been, I think every one of those I could point to that I've been part of has been a silver lining moment of this school year. And sometimes I think that it gets missed by people as we move through our day because it's another meeting, it's another meeting, it's another Zoom, and people get in this rhythm of, oh, I've gone into 7 Zooms today. But if you take a half step back from that and go, but wait a second, that one Zoom was with a group I've never really been able to work with before. And we had such a good conversation. It's the same thing we've just said about this is like, we wouldn't want this to go away. And I think there's some of those opportunities that we can foster within our own districts that we could find ways to do that. I don't know, this kind of maybe even time shifted in some way where it's collaborative, but doesn't have to be in real time. Looking for some kind of asynchronous way that we can collaborate going forward.
Well, and I have some state level teams that I'm a part of, and a lot of the work we do, because we all have super busy schedules, a lot of that is creating a jam board and put your ideas in. And so we can, rather than having multiple meetings, we can just have one meeting. So I think we are getting used to sort of that alternative asynchronous format too, which really does work. Not everything needs to be a meeting, right? I mean, how many memes are there? So that just kind of describe that. And I think, we have to, going forward, we have to really think about that. Could you put it in an email? Can you put it on a Jamboard? Does it have to be a meeting? And can we just maximize our meeting time to the best extent possible by maybe doing some of that work ahead of time?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, and sometimes it is just reminding people, just because Zoom sets something up for an hour doesn't mean we need to meet for an hour. Right. Remember, you can change that. Like, do we need to? And then, right, that initial question of, do we even need to meet about this?
Or can you change the content of the meeting so that it's like, if you're going to parallel it to how, a flipped classroom would work, do you send out the couple videos or a journal article ahead of time to the group, and then the time in the meeting is not, let's, take a minute and read through this journal article or watch this video. It's let's talk about it. I've tried to, in advance of some of our meetings, I just sent a team some descriptive teaching, a YouTube playlist I made of some descriptive teaching videos, and sent that out to them. And then it said, when we meet, we'll talk through it. So I think trying to flip it just to maximize times, because who wants to sit in another meeting for the sake of a meeting? I want people to walk away with it feeling like it's productive in terms of, beginning, middle, and end. We have a plan and we're moving forward for the next steps, and not weigh it down with other stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually did that this year when I was asking for more assistive tech consult time. And so I made like a video kind of trailer of all the stuff I really wanted to highlight. And here are our statistics and how many students, and this is where I see our growth areas are. and sent it to my supervisors before the meeting so that I could be like more efficient in the meeting. And then also I made like this nice video. So I was like, if you want to forward it to anybody to show the benefits of
Why?
assistive technology.
Yeah.
I don't think it really worked as well as I wanted it to, but I think it's a good idea.
It's a really good idea. The Murph sizzle reel. That's what that was. You made
That's right.
an AT sizzle reel. That's all right. No, but I think that's really good. I think that, you know, it's that idea of refocusing people onto what the positives are of what we do, right? It's tough to go in and ask somebody for more time, right, Sarah? You go in, you say, oh, I'm going to need more time to consult. And then people right away are like, whoa, you're a speech person. What are we doing? Do speech things, whatever those are, right? Whatever speech things
Exactly.
are. Yeah, do those. But if you have some information you can share, like in the time I've had, I've been able to do these things this year. And because of these things, these teams moved forward and we're doing things more independently. And because of those things, these students were more successful. I mean, that is very powerful. And to give that in kind of a short blast of showing people in a little video that they can watch. And I think it's a good idea to encourage them to push that around and let other people see it. It demystifies the whole idea of AT also.
What do you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do? Exactly. Who are you? Why are you just walking around all the time? Like, what are you doing?
I know, and I put a lot of AT things in it. Like I turned on captions, I used like a dyslexia-friendly font and did all these things that I was like, these are tools we have in our district and they are free and they are not utilized.
Right. And even that in itself is a huge, it's a power play right there. Of reminding people of these things are not expensive and they're not complex. It's things we have and we just need to start using. I think that can be really, really powerful. And did it work? Did you get more time?
Remains to be seen. I feel like it could change at any time, but I think so.
Okay. Well, that's good. I think that's really good. Then it worked. The sizzle reel worked.
I think there's value. I know this year I've been given a little more time to really devote to AT, and really I think part of my game plan was like market what I do. And I've been, I've joined the dyslexia team to talk to all the dyslexia teachers. I joined the intervention team talking about how AT can be critical during that multi-tiered system of supports and, making sure kids have that available. I've been meeting with all of the instructional facilitators. Really, it's kind of like going out there and selling it. And exactly what you said, Sarah, like we have a whole suite of, tools that we invested in as a district and offered to everyone. And they're being underutilized. And so I've really been trying to hit all those stakeholders, and it's been positive. I think it was a matter of they needed to really understand what the tool was and how to use it and how it applies to their students. So,
yeah, it is a good plan. Make yourself available, be excited to be part of these groups, that translates. People see that and they respond to that. Shannon put in the chat about parent participation being a positive from this whole experience. And without a doubt, parents being seen as more equal members of the team has changed dramatically. And that should be celebrated on its own. That should have its own Sarah Murph sizzle reel. That is a really powerful thing that sometimes flies under the radar and people are not really picking up on, is that we needed team members and these team members happen to live in the homes of our students, and these people stepped up and they helped. And that should be commended, and it has to be recognized that, maybe it will usher in a new view of less confrontational between teams and family members all the time. And maybe it will become more collaborative. That's my hope. Yeah, good. Sarah's going to work on our parent sizzle reel. Great. Keep it up. Use some of your new consult time for that.
Because you don't have anything else to do in that
because you're just probably sitting around. You're like, oh, what should I do with all this crazy consult time I have now?
But I definitely think, like, just from the feedback from like some of our OTs and PTs in speech, and then me and working with families, that the difference of, I think they understand more about what we do and why a student would use a certain tool like Snap and Read or other
Yeah.
things. And I think then they come to the table in an IEP meeting as a more informed team member, because, you know, they're able to see things that normally would be happening at school. Like for a kid that's, you know, high flex or still at home, you know, they're able to have a little window into why would we use a certain tool, so that, you know, a lot of times I feel bad. They come to this IEP meeting and we're using, you know, we love our acronyms, we love our terminology, we love our like quick explanations. And I think they're able to at least understand more about when we get to a goal and we're talking about with this adapted paper and this, you know, text to speech, like they understand what that actually looks like. Whereas before, maybe they were a little bit more detached just because they hadn't seen it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If it wasn't happening at that time with their child, they might not have experienced that. But now they're seeing kind of this broader cross section of the supports that are out there that we can provide. Yeah, for sure. Shannon also said that the vendor training videos and support have increased the number and the quality of that too, which again, they've also been remote in this whole time, right? So I think we've seen a lot of our collaborators, from parents to educators to vendors that support us, having this time to start putting some of these materials together that we can use and share as we go forward. And I think that's been really great. Now I think the trick is going to be finding a good way for us to catalog those materials and have them available to people so that they can access them going forward. So now we're at this point where the materials are there. We're creating things, you know, you do a screencast, you do a video, you do a recording, you make a sizzle reel, you do all these things. Where does all this stuff live so someone can get back to it quickly?
And that's where I shifted to unlisted YouTube playlists, because then I have a playlist on descriptive teaching. I have a playlist on modeling. I have a playlist on using Snap and Read for the first time. And then like Snap and Read 2, you know, that's like the deeper features. And that way I'm not having to research every single time. I also put together Wakelets, which I know will be shocking for those of you who know me.
What's a Wakelet?
I was waiting for you to say that.
Imagine Padlet and Pinterest had a baby. You have the visual format of Pinterest and the organizational structure of Padlet. But I do, you know, I have Wakelets on specific topics so that, you know, and a lot of them are geared towards a parent. So if I've got a parent that we're just starting, you know, a device with, I send them kind of the modeling Wakelet. And that way I can put in like PDFs. I can put in, you know, a doc for my Google Docs. I like everything in one place so that they can go and observe it. And I'll put the link, Kelly, in the chat box to Wakelet itself, and then I'll go pull one of my Wakelets and show what it kind of looks like.
So do you like it? So is it kind of like creating your own website with all your resources, and less complex, or?
Yes, and so.
I was just going to say, Elisa, share your screen, but there you go.
Because I can. So this is my like new Wakelet tab. And sometimes I use it just to collect things, you know, where this is something I need to go back to and add. But a lot of times it's collections of collections of collections. So I've got engaging tools. Like this is a Wakelet that is everything that I have found, used, done with that is Jamboard related. So you can add tweets from Twitter, you can add Google Docs, you can add links to websites, you can embed other Wakelet collections, you can add YouTube videos, which here's that. So it's because it's multiple medium in one place, I feel like it's a good house for like follow up from training resources or those kinds of things. And then again, like I have parent ones that that maybe go a little bit more in depth to a specific topic. And then sometimes I just use them for my own collection. As we're doing things, I go in, This is a huge whiteboard one. You know, I have one specifically on whiteboard.chat. And I think because you can go in and actually add anything you want, or you can just bookmark things. So I have a whole bunch of things that are bookmarked in addition to being in collections. And we've started to use it with students who are either in 11th grade or at the end of their transition program to build kind of a portfolio of their experiences. So kids who maybe will need to go to Disability Resources Center when they go to college are building in the Wakelet, you know, here's an example of what the tool I need and why, and here's, you know, so because they don't have that IEP team anymore to advocate for them, they can go into Disability Resources and kind of be like, these are all the things I need, or go to Voc Rehab and say, this is why I need this technology paid for. So I'm starting to branch out and use it for that in terms of training, but some of them are things that I've just found that I kind of gather, and some of them are more collections of gigantic things. This is a huge vision and hearing collection from a training that I just kind of went through and did within our state. So like all the handouts, so some of it's just me having it in one place so that I know if somebody goes and asks for a specific resource, I can put my finger on it very quickly.
So can
Oh,
we
go-
see,
Go ahead, Kelly.
can you share your Wakelet? Like, can we access your Wakelet, or is it private?
So you have options. You can, so I have a profile on Wakelet. You can set it up so that you can share a specific Wakelet with one person. You can export the whole thing as a PDF, which is kind of nice. It will automatically create a QR code for you to share it with somebody. And then you see all the other options for ways that you could share your collection. You decide as the owner of the collection, whether that collection is unlisted, like nobody can find it, whether it is public, anybody who has a Wakelet account could search for it and find it, or if it's private and only I can see it. So unlisted, basically, if I give you the link, you would be able to see the link and see it, but you wouldn't be able to find it by just searching. So depending on the purpose for it, most of mine tend to stay unlisted. And then I share out the links, but I do have quite a few that are public on their own. But there are tons of Wakelets that are already there and available. You can search other people's Wakelets. You can find other collections that are there. They have this new like Wakelet spaces. So you could create a team space in Wakelet and share resources that way. It does a ton of things. Like this is what my kind of public profile looks like, which just has the ones that have been shared out. So there are some that are here, like the last time we were in person in Indianapolis, I gathered all these, you know, tweets that are there. So I kind of share out a couple of them that I've made public, and anything that's public kind of shows up on your profile page. So you could use it as a landing site in that way, or you could take your Wakelet and embed it in like a Google site or your website. That's also another option.
Yeah. So Elisa here, figure that comment on this, what Shannon said in the chat about using Padlet in that way. I use Padlet in a similar way. When coaching, you can provide all your resources in one place that will support that topic without having to attach files or provide a cloud link.
Yeah. And I think, you know, part of the reason, honestly, I moved away from Padlet is because of the paid connection and not being able to have multiple Padlets without paying. And Wakelet is 100% free. And I think being able to, you know, do things like when I come and open up a new tab, you'll see I have, these are all the tabs that are currently open. I can make a collection with basically 2 clicks. You know, I click create a collection. It tells me, I'm not going to actually save it because it'll be a collection of random things that are open. But then you go in and you can make a title, you can have a cover image or not, and it automatically pulls in all of the things that I happen to have open in Mike's Twitter feed in my current window, all of the windows that are open, and I can make a collection and have it done in about 2 seconds, which for me is a whole lot better than bookmarking and then I don't necessarily go back to it. But I will drop things in a bookmark if I'm not sure where I want them to land, or if it's just something I want to go back to later. I think that's helped. I just, maybe from an executive functioning perspective, for me, having it visually, like I can know, yes, that's the YouTube video I want to share out with somebody, versus maybe having to go watch it again or look at the link and not be able to tell from the link. But I think that there's a lot of useful ways to use it. Like I just did a person-centered planning training and with some transition folks, and just shared them 5 or 6 resources in the handout in one place. And that way it was one link for them to be able to come quickly and look.
I have been thinking, this is a huge part of, being a coordinator for a school district, is how do you package all of this information in a way that people are going to be able to easily come back to it. And I think Google Drive is like the black hole that things get lost in. So I do like that. I created an internal website where I've been trying to put things, but I was starting to get overwhelmed with resources. And I do like the idea of maybe adding that as an option where people can go and, we can categorize different resources.
Yeah, I think part of my summer plan is basically to build out part of our AT resources of on demand. Like we have some on demand training resources, but basically build mini Wakelet collections for an on demand topic. So, never used Snap and Read before. Here's your top 5 things you need to know. And one of them's a video, and one of them's a Google, a Google Doc PDF that I've shared. And one of them is a link to a website, but it's packaged all in one place. And then embed that in my website.
Yeah. It's also interesting if you think about it from a website construction standpoint. If you make a Google site and embed those Wakelets in, then you're just making the changes to the Wakelet whenever you find something, and it's automatically updating the website.
Yeah. And I think
there's a good way to look too.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that quick way. That way, I mean, I can add something to a Wakelet collection from my phone, from my iPad, from the website. So if I'm, flipping through Twitter and I find something that I'm like, oh, wait, or a link I find, I can add it to that Wakelet in 2 seconds. And again, like I said, if it's embedded someplace, it's going to automatically add to it.
Right.
And
it's one of those things that you could also open those up to your team members too. And now everyone's making those changes, but you're all going back to one centralized spot.
Right. So a lot of the Wakelets that I have, you can have collaborators on them. So they're not single source. So like if I'm doing a presentation with somebody, I invite them as a collaborator, like Judy Schoonover and I with the ergonomics one, we both are collaborators on that Wakelet. So anytime she sees something out there, she adds it, to the Wakelet, or you can have as many collaborators as you want. And I do think that they've done a lot, although they're continuing to improve in terms of making it accessible. It works pretty nicely with screen readers. It's got immersive reader built into it. While there's always things that, there's definitely ways to improve. I think that they've done a good job of thinking about accessibility from the ground up.
Did you see Holly's question?
Anyone
Wakelet
know
ambassador?
how to share a Wakelet without your personal name tied to it? No, I'm just thinking about what it looks like when it's shared out. So like our ergonomics presentation, when it's shared out, well, here, let me see what it looks like. So this is the ergonomics Wakelet that we share out as a part of our presentation. I have a Wakelet account that I sign in through Google, so I'm pretty sure it shows up as, in terms of my name, in terms of not wanting to take individual credit, you mean like it appears the resource is yours that you put out there? Is that what the question is? I want to make sure I'm answering the right question, Holly.
sorry, I was typing it out on the chat.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
And then I realized you guys were waiting for the answer.
We were all staring intently at you guys.
No, so we create resources and we come up with things together as a team, and then we put them on the website. And when we share it on our website, then like if I'm the person that's actually gathering the resources, then it will say by Holly Crawl, you know, like it'll say Holly Crawl, it'll say my name. And I want it to say like the AT team, because we created it together, you know, all together. And I don't want it to look like I did it all by myself.
Right. So there's two different ways I can think to answer that. So here I put a text note in the very beginning of the Wakelet that just says, this is a collection that was curated by these two people for this series of trainings. And then I keep adding time periods because we keep doing them. And so this is one way to kind of give like whole team credit. And then in terms of anything else that's linked, like if I have, and I'm looking for, if I have like a Google Drive link, I may not have one in here because there's a lot of websites, but if you're linking to a Google Drive PDF or whatever that's shared, that's going to have whatever citation or whatever you put in the Google Drive. Now you can also put in, you know, if you put in a header or other information, like right here, this basically is a text area.
Right.
For each of the dividing, it's just the way I chose to organize it. So this right here is just text. It can say anything you want it to say. So you could, like, if you have a category of resources, like, you know, a Rockford team resources, you know, organized by Mary, you know, Joe, Mary, and whatever, you could put that in this text box and have it, then it would show up ahead of whatever this section is that you put out. So, I mean, I don't think anybody would look at this Wakelet and think I made all of those things, you know, and I think the best way to give credit is, again, this, and then we're linking directly to the places where the information is. Does that answer the question at all?
Yeah, it does. I just didn't want it to, you know, like look like every time I'm the one posting it and like, oh, geez, what is the rest of the team doing?
Well, and there are other things you can do depending on how your email is set up. I know some districts that have a AT at whatever email, that's one that everyone has access to, and you could use that to go into the Wakelet account. Mine is just connected to my email.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
That's what I just did. I made it the AT department, so it comes up as company AT.
Right. Exactly. Even if maybe create a new Gmail account, just some random Gmail account
You could
that
absolutely,
all of you have access to.
Yeah, you could
Yeah,
absolutely.
but unfortunately, if I want to be able to access it on my work computer, it has to be within the bubble.
No, those darn bubbles.
So-
Yeah.
Well, and you can also in your user, depending on what it looks like, you can adjust what your public profile is. So you could create an account, whether you could either have your individual accounts and all be collaborators on the Wakelet, or you could create one single account that your bio is, this is the account for the AT team for Rockford. And then anybody who sees that profile would see it as a clustered account, not your individuals. Because there's a couple different ways you can set up an account. Linking through Google is just one of them. I just do it for ease of clicking, so I don't have to remember 14 different passwords and whatever.
Depending on your IT department, one of the things we did in our lab is we have 35 computers. And so our IT rep might set up, not yours, set up an email address like ATRC1, ATRC2, and that goes, and then there's a Google one for each of the computers, but they all go into one email address so that we can check them all with ease. And that way, when we're doing trainings, they all have their own, but it's really one email address, but it's a different title that all go into like one cloud, and your IT team can set those up.
And if you're Google based, you can basically make one account and have like 10 aliases
Yeah.
connected to it. So if
Right.
they pay by account, they're only paying for one. But they can have it be all alias accounts. So like in my private practice world, I have my admin at, but it also gets, I also get email at info at and billing at and whatever at, and it's one account.
Right. And
So
then
that's
all-
something IT can also do. They all funnel to the same place right now.
Yeah.
Great, thank you guys very much. I knew you would know the answer.
That was good stuff.
And as
Or you could just
Naomi-
flat out,
yeah.
Holly, just take credit for it and be done with it. I mean, I don't know what the big problem was.
Yeah,
And
and
if you guys, if you weren't noticing the chat while that was all happening, Alyssa agreed to a 15-minute Wakelet presentation that Naomi was smart enough to ask her to do while we were talking. And Alyssa, in a moment of weakness, said yes. So we'll
You
have that in
knew-
one of our weeks coming up. We'll let her choose when.
it wasn't really a moment of weakness. You knew
Yeah,
I'd
she
say
just took it in
yes.
stride. She's like, whatever. Yeah, it's fine.
Kind of was
So-
prepared for it.
So we have an Alyssa 15-minute training coming up. We have Murph is going to show her sizzle reel at some point. No pressure, not today. Maybe
I was
another
gonna say,
day.
I don't
but
think she ever really agreed to that.
I
per
could have sworn I heard her say that. It's weird. I
se.
thought I heard it. Maybe I just wasn't
Check the
listening right.
recording. Check
I don't
the
know. I'll check the recording, but I'm pretty sure she said that.
I'll show it.
That's the right answer.
I
Here we
worked
go.
really hard to make it really short and really concise, so it'll only take up 8 minutes of your time.
Awesome. I think that I would like to watch that. I would like to see, because I
I'll
think
show it.
as people go forward, I think that could be something that people could replicate and be able to show what they do.
Yeah, and it was really helpful because Anya, who's on here sometimes, she's an SLP on the West Coast. She had done something, she didn't do a video, but she had done like a presentation to her district about having like more AT support. So I shared with her what I did last year. She shared it back, what she did this year. And so then I used that stuff to make my video. So it's been really helpful for me to see how other people are like advocating for time. So
Yeah,
happy
I
to
think
share.
that's all right. It's a deal. Thanks, Murph. And maybe
Yeah.
what we'll do is in our quest to be more flipped in how we do this, maybe we'll share the link ahead of time and then just chat about it during the town hall. You guys think I
Look
don't
at
pay
us.
attention as we go through. I'm paying attention.
Look
I'm
at
not
us
with you.
making changes based on conversation right in the moment.
I'm pointing to you. You're right next to me. That's it. That's the right answer. Perfect. All right. So maybe we'll do that. So if Sarah shares the link, maybe we'll have a chat about that next week. Maybe we can do that.
Well, because I think that data conversation is so important, and whether it means that you gain extra time or a position or whatever, I mean, I think it's just so important to have the conversation, just like we would do with speech therapists, caseload versus workload. I mean, we had to do the same thing in our district, and I made a little spreadsheet, and it was basically the time that I spend now over a month with certain students or situations, like doing student work, doing observations, and ideally the amount of time I need for those student cases.
Right.
And the difference was pretty alarming. I mean, I used a Google Sheet, so it made a pretty little chart that then my supervisor could take and use to hopefully advocate for more time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that conversation, again, it's so important, because otherwise, just to bring the whole conversation full circle, like you aren't going to be able to just make it until the end of the year, and you're going to need way more self-care time if you're trying to do a job that's a 7-day-a-week job in 5 weeks, 5 days.
Right.
Like, it's just
Exactly.
not realistic
Can't do it.
for
Yeah.
your mental health. Yeah.
Awesome. That was a full circle. I saw what we did there. We tied it all right back.
You're welcome. I
No,
tied
thank
it up
you.
in a pretty bow for you.
That is it. I don't think there's anything else we should say. We should all just hang up quietly now and just go about our business, because that was good stuff. You can't tie it up better than that. All right, guys, it is 1 minute after. I'll let you go back to your jobs. Thank you for another excellent conversation. And we'll do this again next week. We'll
You're
see you then.
welcome.
Sarah, share the link with us. See you, everybody.
Mike, do you have a second to hang after you stop recording?
Thank you.